All right. Thank you, Amy. Welcome, everybody. Just wanted to give an introduction. I was just talking to Amy. So first of all, I'm Sabrina Bonaparte. I'm giving the talk today. The person, Amy, who is just on your screen, is one of the amazing employees at the Brain Injury Alliance Washington. Amy is sort of a resource manager slash does everything, kind of. She does everything, but she's most well known for her excellent work helping people and really utilizing resources and connecting the community to each other. So Amy, thank you for being here. I know this is after work hours, so I really appreciate that.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So just an introduction to why you're here, what the organization is. As I mentioned, my name is Sabrina, and I am doing this as part of the Brain Health and Wellness courses for the Brain Injury Alliance of Washington. The organization has been around for around 40 years at this point, so quite a while, helping individuals with brain injuries and their family, both acquired brain injury and traumatic brain injury. My experience is mostly more around traumatic brain injury, as you will hear from my story. However, I have had people in my family who have had acquired brain injuries as well, so lots of brain injuries in my family. I wanted to give this talk specifically because tomorrow is the 10-year anniversary of my husband's bicycle accident, which gave him his TBI and is the entire reason why I'm here today. So I have a lot of stuff I'd love to share with people because I've made a lot of mistakes in the last 10 years and I've been inefficient and I've done things wrong and I've done things right, maybe by accident sometimes. So I kind of wanted to just share with you all the things that I've learned in the last 10 years. And hopefully, if some of you are newer to caregiving, you can take some of the advice from the mistakes that I made and maybe not make those mistakes in the future. So this is actually a picture of myself 10 years ago. It was taken, I double checked, on July 11th, 2013. As you can see, miraculously, I have not aged in 10 years. It's incredible, right? I look exactly the same, minus the hair color. That is not true, I know, but this was me 10 years ago. So I'm going to pretend as if this presentation is me talking to that person right there and saying, here's all the things you need to know. You're about to have a serious life change. Let me give you some info. And if you're wondering, that jersey I'm wearing is Jorge Campos, for those of you who are Mexican soccer fans, goalkeeper / forward for Mexico in the 90s. That shirt is from Mexico. My dad actually called the manufacturer in Mexico City and had it shipped to my house in Florida. And I was a goalie growing up and I wore that shirt. So that is an actual authentic Jorge Campos jersey. And I don't know where you can get it now. So sorry, I can't include that link later in my presentation. All right, so I gave you a little bit of background on who I am. I'm a caregiver of 10 years. I love animals, as you can see. All but one of those dogs still live in my house. We foster failed on 2 of them. The little red Chihuahua is no longer with us because she found a great home somewhere else. But everybody else, we have 4 dogs and 2 cats that live with us. You might recognize my voice because for a couple of episodes, I was the host of Brain Injury Today, the podcast that the Brain Injury Alliance put out over the last couple of years. And I'm currently the board president at the Brain Injury Alliance of Washington. I was just a member of the board since 2018 and then was elected president recently. So that is who I am. So now kind of getting into my advice. The first thing I will always tell people is accept help, especially if it's offered. So help can be many things. It can be everyday tasks. One of the things that a friend did for me about 2 weeks after Brandon's accident, she called me and she said, I want to help you. What do you need? And I said, you know what, to be honest, we were going to get our car detailed like right before his accident and our car is kind of a mess. So I would love for you to take my car to Pink Elephant and get it detailed. And she did. She drove to my house, got my car, got it washed, got it detailed and brought it back. And it was so helpful just to have like some menial task off my plate when I was trying to take care of my husband who had just gotten out of the hospital. So, you know, things like that. And also accepting help for yourself. So if that means you need mental health counseling, if you need to go to a support group, if you need to have, I'll talk about this a little bit later, anything that can help you get better, I would say if anyone can help you with that, do it. If you can get respite care, and for those that you don't know what that is, that's temporary relief from caregiving. So maybe that's a professional caregiver that helps you. Maybe you have a live-in nurse that can help you, or maybe it's a family member that just stays home with the person that you're caring for, and then they can give you like a break for a little bit. It's really important. And then the last thing that I would say, and this didn't really exist when I was starting out as a new caregiver, there's so much technology out here right now to help make your life easier. So much technology. In fact, I probably shouldn't admit this, but I used a lot of technology to put this deck together. So putting this deck together helped me writing letters to people. You can have AI do these sorts of things. I will talk a little bit more about how to utilize technology in your appointments with your doctors later, but there's a lot of technology out there now that makes your life easier. Use it. So accept technology from robots, I guess you could say, not just people. It's all there for you, and accepting help will free you up to do other things and free up your energy. The second one, and this maybe I should have put as number one for me. I wish I had known this. Get back to people on your own time. What I mean by that, I was absolutely inundated with people texting me, calling me, emailing me, sending me messages on social media, asking how Brandon was, offering help, just well wishes, telling me that they loved me. And I was up until 2 a.m. every day for the first 2 or 3 weeks, just getting back to people because I was already busy as a caregiver. And so then when my husband was sleeping, I was like on my devices trying to get back to people. And if someone called me, I would call them back immediately, even if I was at the hospital, because I was so appreciative that everyone was reaching out. Don't do that. I burned myself out. Most people have good intentions and they want to help. And the reason why they're reaching out is because they love you and they care about you. And if it takes you 2 days or even 2 weeks to get back to them, give yourself time. You don't have to rush this. I really wish I had done this. This was something that was a big mistake for me early on. And even if your response is quick, hey, I got your message. We'll talk to you later. Thank you so much. Whereas I would have to write everybody a full book report on how everything was going. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. And I would say asking for help from family and friends. If you can reach out to others to help with updates, to help with, any sort of thank yous, it's great to have that. So like my in-laws were an enormous help because, as you could probably imagine, my husband's entire family was calling nonstop to be like, what's going on? Is he okay? They live in Florida. We're up here in Seattle. It's really far away. They felt like there was nothing they could do. My mother-in-law was the most amazing person and stayed with us for 8 weeks. And she was calling the rest of the family for me and giving them updates, or she'd call my father-in-law and then he would call some of his family. And so I had this tree of people like pushing, updates along a chain. It was so helpful because I did not want to ignore his family, but they were the ones that needed and wanted updates the most. And so it was taking a lot of my time. And this was so great to have help with that. So I would say if you can utilize people in that sense to help you respond to people, that's great. Okay. Amy, you're on mute.
How do I pin you to, do you know?
Good question. I don't.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm doing something.
Just go to the ... in her upper right corner and then yeah.
Okay, so that's more of you, and then the slides are on the side. I had a request.
Okay. Is that working for people? Okay, I'm going to assume that's a yes. Okay, cool. I see thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you. Another one, this one is so important, and it took me so long to realize this one. People process things differently. Everyone has different coping, oh my goodness, different coping strategies. Not everyone's comfortable when things change in life, especially when it's a traumatic change. Some people will jump into action and some of your friends may disappear, right? I thought when Brandon had his accident that I was going to find out who my true friends really were. And some of my quote unquote true friends let me down, but it wasn't until I talked to them that I realized that there was a big reason why that happened. And letting people operate on their own timelines is very helpful. I would like to call out a story. I'm not going to use this person's name, and hopefully you won't, if you know this person, you won't be able to identify them from the story, but this was life-changing for me. So we have some very close friends that were home for the summer in their home country when Brandon had his accident. And they're some of the nicest, most caring, most considerate people I've ever met. And we never heard from them. And, you know, they'd like a few Facebook posts or whatever, but we never heard from them, not even a message. Like, where did they go? What happened? Then they came back to Seattle and we had brunch with them, and they were like, we were so shocked and so upset by what happened. We didn't know what to do. We were paralyzed. We just had no idea how to react. And when we had this conversation, it made me realize, like, it's not that they're not our true friends. They had to deal with it in their own way. And, you know, of course, on this conversation, they were so supportive and we knew that they loved us, right? But just by having this conversation with them, it really made me realize that, like, not everybody is going to make you dinner or start a meal train or drive you to doctor's appointments, or like even feel comfortable doing that, because they might be in so much shock by what just happened that they don't know how to process it. So keep that in mind. Yes, we did have some people that, I hate to say it this way, but they kind of sucked and they did disappear. And, you know, that's a different story. But, you know, not everyone is comfortable immediately jumping into action. Not everyone knows what to do. So give people some grace. Obviously, you need to take care of yourself first, and you can have these conversations with them, and it's totally fair to do that. But I think just letting people work through things on their own time is going to really help you. And in the long run, it's going to help you keep more people around you if you let people have their ability to cope with what just happened. So number 4, be an advocate. This one's really, really important. I do hear sometimes people saying, people with brain injuries or people with disabilities, they need a voice because they're voiceless or they don't have their own voice. That is absolutely not true. I do not buy that at all. Unless somebody is completely nonverbal or in a coma and really actually can't communicate with you, fine. But, you know, in my case, Brandon was able to communicate with me. I was able to ask him questions and find out what his situation was. So when I say ask questions, I mean ask questions of your care team. Make sure you get clarification, make sure you fully understand what they're saying, but also ask questions of the person you're caring for and make sure you fully understand their situation. You know, Brandon was in the situation where, yeah, of course, he could have gone to the doctor and advocated for himself, but he was exhausted. He had just had a major brain injury. He needed me there to just help him get through his day. And I was speaking directly for him. And what I say, this is really important. Always listen before speaking. What I mean, listen to the person you're caring for. If they tell you something, take it seriously. Brain injuries, a lot of disabilities, some mental illnesses are invisible. You cannot see it. If you break your arm and your arm is like hanging in a weird direction, you know there's something wrong with someone's arm. They need to go get an x-ray and probably a cast on their arm. You cannot see when someone has a brain injury or when somebody has depression or when somebody has maybe MS in certain cases. And so you need to listen to the person who you're actually advocating for and find out what they need, what they want, and really listen. And you need to be that conduit between that person and your care team. And if that person doesn't want you to be the conduit, then back off. Only be an advocate if the person you're working with wants to be advocated for. I also found that it's really important to be prepared ahead of time when you go to your care team. So if you're going to physical therapy, be prepared with questions. If you don't have any, that's fine. But if there's issues coming up or you have questions, write them down, be prepared, get them all in one place. And again, always, this is my I can't stress this enough, collaborate with the person you're caring for. It's not just the questions you have, it's the questions they have too. So make sure you do that. Seek second opinions. You know, I'm not going to say that you should challenge everything your doctor says, but you as a caregiver are the person who spends the most time with the person you're caring for, right? So if you see something and you don't think it's right and the person you're caring for does not think it's right either, you can challenge this. You can seek second opinions. I have seen this before where caregivers have done this and they have found that the second opinion is correct, or the third or the fourth opinion is more like in line with what they're seeing. So, you know, yes, you're not a doctor, don't pretend to be one, but you know, you can seek second opinions, you can ask other people, you don't have to accept everything that's told to you. You know that person you're caring for. So, you know, be assertive and know that you can do that. And also don't forget to advocate for yourself. So, you know, if you're in a situation where someone says the expectation is that you will do this, and you know you can't do that, or you just don't have the time or the energy, again, seek help. But maybe it's, you know, you need to advocate for yourself as well, because you can only do so much as a caregiver. So, you know, takeaways on the slide: listen, 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 collaborate if you can, and advocate for yourself. Always do that. And then I will say again, do your own, and I have reputable in parentheses here, but I mean this, reputable research. So what you should not do is go on the internet and go like down a bunch of rabbit holes about wacko stuff on brain injury that has no research behind it. Or, you know, this one guy found this plant that you can eat and then it cures your brain injury. Like, please don't do that kind of research. You can look into that kind of stuff, but don't make that how you know, have don't make that how you go through care, right? The way I found it helpful is, you know, Brandon had his brain injury, and the day he got discharged from Harborview, I got a 1-page PDF explaining what brain injury was. It was not helpful. It didn't really tell me much. Most of his activity, his mood swings, things that his inability to control his emotions, I had no idea that that was coming from his brain injury until I started doing more research. And the things that I did, I read blogs written by caregivers and survivors. And I actually have some of these resources in a slide at the end, and I will email them out after the class as well, so that you have some idea of what I'm talking about here. So read firsthand accounts of caregivers and survivors. That's going to help you. That's kind of what helped me to sort of understand, oh my gosh, the things he's going through, other people have gone through them too, right? And then that led me to send him to a support group right away. Utilize resources from the Brain Injury Alliance of Washington and the other brain injury alliances around the country. And the Brain Injury Association and the brain injury associations around the country. There's so many people doing this work that have research that they've combed through for you already, and have articles you can just like be like, okay, this study was done on brain injury, and we as an organization think it's something you should read. So let other people do that work for you and find that, and then read those articles. There's newsletters you can subscribe to for people who are doing legislative work, for people who are doing research in brain injury. And you could subscribe to those. And again, they'll aggregate all the sources you need, so you don't have to figure out what are the most reputable journals that you need to look at. Unless, as I mentioned next, that you want to read scientific journals. If that's your thing, if you really are into reading scientific journals, do it. There's tons of studies out there on brain injury, pediatric brain injury, mild brain injury, like everything, stroke. You can read articles on anything. So if that's what you like doing, do that. That's the source. That's where you want to get your info from. And then I will say, never stop learning. I'm 10 years in and I still learn new things about brain injury all the time, because I follow lots of accounts on social media. I have newsletters, I'm reading blogs. Everything is just, you know, inundating me with information, and new information comes out all the time. It's always changing, as scientific research does. So just keep learning as much as you can. Again, if you're a new caregiver, the accident just happened, I don't recommend that you spend 6 hours a day reading scientific journals or even going through this stuff. Maybe archive it, save it, bookmark it, save it for later, read it when you have time. But I would say that this was really helpful. And when I started learning more about brain injury and found the Brain Injury Alliance, this was all through my own research. Nobody at Harborview gave me this information. I just kind of had to find it on my own. So I will say, you're going to have to find things on your own. But again, Brain Injury Alliance is here for you too. So you don't have to be completely on your own. I just didn't even know they existed until I found them. So if you're at this talk, you already know they exist. So you can reach out as well if you need help. So this one, record your conversations. you know, technology changes so much. It's very interesting because I was thinking about back in 2013, which is only 10 years ago, the way that we recorded our conversations with our care team was we used voice notes on our phone. You could use a recorder, anything like that. You could take a video if you want. We could do that back then too. It wasn't that long ago. You could take your own handwritten notes, but there's actually really cool stuff coming out now that even makes it easier for you to take notes in your exam, whatever exam you're doing, whatever sort of visit you have with a care provider. So there's this, first of all, I want to say I'm not sponsored by this app. I have no vested interest in it. It was just told to me and I thought it was really cool. So there's this new app called Abridge. I have a link to it here and I'll send that out too. Basically, it records your conversations with your care providers and then uses artificial intelligence or AI to summarize the conversations for you. So it's really cool in the fact that, you know, if you're so stressed out and you're so tired, or you can't even go to an appointment, let's say there were times I couldn't go to appointments with Brandon. And so he had to record things and then play them back for me, but then I'd have to listen and take copious notes. This product does that for you. It actually takes the notes and summarizes the conversation. And I think as AI becomes more prevalent in our society, you're going to see more technology like that. Use it, use it, use it. It will make your life so much easier. Of course, with this stuff, I will always caution with stuff like this. You might want to, if you have listened to the recording or you were there and you see the notes are wrong, don't just go with those. But I would say use that kind of technology. It will make your life so much easier and you'll have a record of all the appointments that you've had in one place, which is really nice. I think that I have a great memory and I can remember anything. And it's, you know, that's people tell me things, I just remember them. But especially when you're a caregiver, you're just so exhausted all the time. You can't always rely on just your memory alone, and having recordings or notes or something to kind of reference back to is just super helpful. And then you have it in a place, not just for yourself, but the person you're caring for too. So I would say definitely record your conversations in one way or another. This one, number 7, find others who can relate. This one was huge, huge for me. A lot of people, myself included, anyone who knows me knows that I think I can do everything. I can do it all myself. I don't need help. I can just handle it. I'm going to handle it. That's what I always say. I couldn't. Nobody can. Like, it's a really difficult position to be put in, right? So when I finally found a community of mostly women, actually, it was all women actually, who were caregivers of their spouses, many of whom had bicycle accidents, just like Brandon, it was so helpful. I was able to, as I have on the screen, like run things by them. What do you all think about this? How should I handle this situation? They could help me with problem solving because they had been there before. They knew what I was going through. It reduced my isolation. I could get out of the house once in a while and kind of be like, okay, there's this community of people and they get it. The validation of feelings, they get it. Like, I could tell them about something that most people would find to be minor or obscure at Brandon's doctor's appointments, and they would celebrate it with me because they knew what a big deal it was because they understood. So just finding others who can relate is so important. And I say this not just for caregivers. If you have a brain injury, if you have any disability, finding others who can relate to you is vital. As soon as, you know, like I said, as soon as I found out what brain injury symptoms were, I think Brandon's accident was in July. In about October, I found out, you know, all of this stuff. I found out about the Brain Injury Alliance. Brandon was luckily well enough to be able to get on a bus and go. And I said, get on that bus, go to Harborview, go to a support group. You need this. I'm like, I love you. I want to help you and I'm going to help you, but I don't fully understand what you're going through. But there's going to be people at the support group who do. And that's who you need to talk to right now. And then beyond that, I can help you with everything else. And just because I don't fully understand what he's going through, because I myself have not gone through it, doesn't mean that I can't sympathize with him, because I did. I just can't empathize with him. And I needed him to find people who could empathize with him. Same thing for caregivers. You have to find people who can empathize with you because it's really, really important. In the resources slide later, I have a link to, there's a caregiver support group in Washington State. It's virtual, so you don't even have to leave your house. And hopefully there will be more in the future, but there's at least one that you can attend. And it's so, so important, not just for brain injury survivors, but caregivers to find that community. It's just so important. This one, embrace change. There's a lot, this one's pretty loaded. So as I mentioned, life post-injury is going to be different, and that's okay. For some people who have brain injuries, life doesn't really change that much, and that's okay too. But for some people, it changes dramatically. It's a major change. There's personality changes. There's changes in the way that people can just function day to day. There's a lot of change, and you have to be able to embrace that change. And I know Sherry's on the call. We heard her earlier. She actually introduced me to this term I had not heard of called ambiguous grief. And if you've not heard of it, it's basically when your circumstances lack a clear conclusion or closure. So for example, let's say hypothetically speaking, worst case scenario had happened the day that Brandon had his accident and he didn't survive. That would have been grief for me, but in a very different way. Case closed, he's no longer here. I can grieve him no longer being here. Ambiguous grief is a little different than that. What that is like, he had a brain injury. Now I have no idea what the rest of our lives are going to look like together. I don't know, is he going to die from this? I don't know how disabled he will be from this. I don't know, is his, if we have a neuropsychic exam, lapses in memory that are significant, which actually did happen. How long is this going to last? Is this a year thing? Is this a permanent thing? I don't know. And so there's a lot of uncertainty around that. And ambiguous grief is kind of how you grieve when you don't really have a conclusion or you don't really understand what the timeline is going to be. It's a complicated process. Like any sort of grief, you go through a lot of different phases. They're all valid. And if you do go through ambiguous grief, that is perfectly acceptable. That is perfectly okay. That is within the way that we should as humans survive. Like that's just the way it should be. There's nothing wrong with you if you go through ambiguous grief. When there's that much uncertainty in your life, it makes sense that you would have a lot of feelings around it. So you can do more research on ambiguous grief if you want, but that was just something I wanted to bring up. And then the last thing I wanted to put on here is bonus time. I have a lot of friends on the call. I know I can see them. They all know what bonus time is, but for those of you that don't, allow me to explain. And I really would love Brandon to explain this because it's his term, but I'm going to explain it for him because I have the mic at the moment. But essentially what that means is the day of Brandon's accident, his injuries were quite severe. He didn't just have a brain injury. He had broken ribs. He had his face had to be fully reconstructed. He has 7 titanium plates in his face. He was badly injured. And on top of that, had a brain bleed. And so, when we talked to the police officer who was in charge of his case, because it was an automobile collision, he said, 9 times out of 10, I'm calling the family and this person does not survive. It's remarkable that he's still here. And so what that means to Brandon is that on July 25th, 2013, by all probability, he should no longer be here, but he is. And so now every day since then, he considers to be bonus time. It's bonus. And everybody has their own bonus time, right? It doesn't necessarily take a near-death accident to get you there, but any sort of change in your life can give you your own bonus time. So that's kind of how we view things. Brandon, if you knew him pre-injury, was not the type of person who needed a wake-up call. He was not the type of person that didn't live life to the fullest. He always had this personality, but bonus time is just a little bit more special now. So embrace change, embrace your bonus time. This one, recovery is not linear. This is so important, particularly when it comes to brain injury. So one thing I would like to stress is that nobody, and I repeat, nobody has a baseline neuropsychological exam. Nobody says, you know what, I'm going to go to my neuropsychologist and just do an 8-hour test all day and see what my neuropsychological baseline is in the event that I might get into an accident. So when I get into the accident, I can do another test and find out what my deficits are. That is a fake scenario. No one does that. So because of that, it's really hard to tell sort of what's going on with your brain and what's brain injury and what's other things, right? And so Brandon has given me permission to share this. He was diagnosed as a child with ADHD. He's had it his entire life. He went to special schools for it. He's always had issues with his ADHD that he's had to work through. Some of the things that I thought were issues due to his brain injury, we more recently found out were due to his ADHD and not his brain injury. And so it's kind of this intermingling of conditions that has made it difficult to figure out how are we recovering from brain injury. Not just that, we're all aging. We're 10 years older. Yeah, I showed that picture of me and I joked that I look exactly the same. I do not. I am 10 years older. Brandon is 10 years older. We were in our he was in his mid 30s. I was in my early 30s. Now we're in our 40s. Bodies change, minds change, no matter what you do, right? So it's hard to tell. And that is what makes recovery so difficult. Nobody ages backwards. Nobody's ADHD or autism or depression goes away as soon as you have a brain injury. And we don't know how those are interacting with each other. So it makes recovery difficult to diagnose and difficult to figure out how to move forward. And anyone who's recovered from any sort of injury or illness will know some days are good, some days are really challenging. Some days you feel like I'm getting better, this is all over, it's done. And then the next day you relapse what feels like a year. And this is totally within the bounds of normality. That's how this works. So recovery is a very complex, complicated, squishy, non-linear process. Always remember that. You're not going to go from, okay, it's been a year, everything's great. Some people might, but most people with brain injuries especially do not have that. And that is totally fine. And then my last thing I would tell people is try to do what I'm doing today if and only if you have the time, capacity, and energy to do it. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to over the last 10 years, over the phone, over Zoom, however, in person, to just assure them that their life was going to be okay, that we went through it too, that our experience, as I said, was very unique, but it's also very universal. There's things that people can take away from what I've learned. Some things that I did or that happened to us will not happen to you, right? But a lot of the things are common among caregivers, and not even just caregivers for people with brain injury, caregivers for people with any condition share a lot of similarities. And I would say that, you don't have to give a talk at the Brain Injury Alliance. You don't have to talk to people on the phone. You don't have to do any of the things I've done. You could just do something small, just a small act of kindness, any sort of act of compassion. If you have a friend who is going through what you went through, you don't have the mental energy to do anything other than maybe send them a picture of a baby animal to make them smile. That is helpful. So anything you can do to support other people, pay it forward. If you can share your experience, great. If you don't feel comfortable sharing your experience, don't. If you have no mental energy to talk to someone on the phone that maybe really needs you, you have to protect your own space. So don't do that. If somebody asked me 2 months after Brandon's accident, like, hey, I just had a brain injury, can you help me? I would have said, no, I haven't slept in 2 months and I can't even think straight. I'm not going to talk to you. But now, yes, I will never not talk to somebody. I will always talk to brain injury survivors. I will always talk to caregivers, anyone in the field, always talk to people, because I feel like that is my responsibility now. That I don't want to say that, we're in the clear, because with Brandon's injury, it's going to be a lifelong process, but it's gotten to the point where I am not a caregiver 24/7 as I was at the beginning. And so for me to be able to pay it forward is extremely important. And if you can do it in any way, then I think you should too. So I have this page here. I will send it out in the email as well. This has some resources on some blogs and articles I was talking about, some organizations you can follow. There's a couple of links on our story. We made a video with Brainline back in 2014, and Brandon was also featured in the Seattle Bike blog back in 2014. All of that information is very old, but it's also still very relevant. So I'll make sure everybody gets these. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't say happy karmic anniversary to my love, my husband, Brandon. He saw me give this presentation last night. In fact, he timed it for me, and this slide was not in there, so he has no idea. I slipped it in this afternoon. But 10 years tomorrow is karmic anniversary, as he calls it. And I would not want to be on this journey with anybody else. I'm so proud of you. The last 10 years have been really hard, but I'm just happy that You chose me to go along with you. All right, now I'm going to stop crying. And I just wanted to thank everybody for coming to this talk, and see if there's any questions. I'm sure, oh my gosh, I can see there's a lot of chats that I probably missed now. So I should probably get to that. But please support the Brain Injury Alliance. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the board president. So if I don't say this, I'm going to get in trouble. Not really, but I would love for all of you, if you were inspired by this talk and you want to see more of these talks, I, of course, did this for free. Everything I do is for free, but we, you know, some of the things we do cost money. And so if you want to support the Brain Injury Alliance in any way monetarily, of course, we'd love that. We'd appreciate that. If you want to do it in honor of Brandon's 10-year anniversary, that would mean a lot to us, so that the Alliance can continue to help people like us who they've helped for the last 10 years. So if you were inspired and you feel that you can do that, please do. If not, you can share this recording, or you can just spread the word about brain injury and wearing those bicycle helmets that you see us wearing, or any way to safely protect your brain. So any way you want to support. So just thank you, Amy, for having me, and thank you everybody for being here. And now I will stop talking and answer questions.
Awesome. That was so great, Sabrina. Thank you so much for being vulnerable enough to share everything you've been through. I know it's so traumatic and just so heavy. So thank you so much for all the education you've given us. I have done, I think, a pretty decent job of monitoring the chat. So I think we're caught up with questions there as of now. So maybe we can get some hands raised and call on folks, and I'll also keep an eye on the chat.
Do we want to turn the recording off?
Thank you for the reminder. Yes. I can figure out how.